today. My name is Kalu Aja, and again, welcome to a wonderful session with me this afternoon. Special spaces, we're with the nice folks from the Faith Institute, and we are talking today about their 2023 State of Entrepreneurship in Nigeria, right? Excellent report, guys. I got a sneak peek at it. Very impressive. I understand they do this every year. This is the third year in a row where they are looking at the state of entrepreneurs in Nigeria, reviewing the performance of the nano, micro, small, and medium scale enterprises in Nigeria. Why I particularly like this report is that it talks about the challenges that the small business folks in Nigeria are facing. What are those challenges? The current ones, to get the ability to get cash to run their business, the ability to basically scale. Then it talks about what states are doing to essentially encourage entrepreneurship in their own state. It ranks those states. We want to know how the states that are doing very, very well, what did they do to create jobs in their states. It's all about jobs, guys. We want to learn what those states did well, i.e. across the sub-nationals. I'm very interested and was intrigued by the number of new businesses created in this report. What states were creating businesses down to the gender. They broke it down according to the gender, who was basically creating businesses per state, per gender, and how and why they were able to do this. And of course, the impact of your subsidy, the capacity building, and all that. So I don't want to take too much time. I want to get the team in here. I've got a few folks in here that are going to talk around this report. I've got Obele. He's already here. I'm going to add Mr. Wilson, the economist. I'm going to add Faith Institute, the author of the report, to actually walk us through the report. It's really lots of data hidden in there that you just want to pull out from them and talk around it. Hopefully the idea is that you listening can pick a few nuggets, and if you're trying to open up for your own business, you will pick a few nuggets and that would help you. Like for instance, I was very, very surprised to see that Kano State was the number one state for this number one subnational for job creation in Nigeria, i.e. entrepreneurship. I was very surprised, but then I read what Kano had done, and I'm going to talk about that, and you can see why Kano was number one. I want to basically see if other states can copy the good thing that Kano is doing, and then of course we can expand that. So Billy, I have you already on mic. Let me have you on mute, introduce yourself, and then we can take it from there. Oh Billy, hi, can you hear me? You have to unmute and then you go ahead and speak. Okay, guys, just going to wait for them to come on stream. Let me just, perhaps I could take the lead and just talk about just one part of that I saw in the report that did hit me a bit, right? And I want them to basically come online and basically just talk us through the report. Once they are in there, guys, just give me a heads up and I can add you to speak. Yes, I see. You got to unmute and then you can speak and then we can all hear you. Join. Mr. Wilson, I see you there. I'm going to invite you once again or just request to speak and then you can get that done as well. Excellent. There we go. Excellent. So I saw in this report, right, Nigerian businesses were basically creating jobs, and they said in the report that their incomes did go up. But casually, I noticed that the business were not employing new workers. So they were creating jobs, they were expanding, but they were not hiring new workers. Very, very interesting data set. I like to understand why. Is it because they were trying to save on costs, perhaps, and they didn't want to hire new workers? But I just want to look at that because that talks about the unemployment in Nigeria, where we then have this large number of youths unemployed, right? And also, the other data set that I saw in the report was the large number of older females that were creating jobs in their later years. If you look on the male side and on the general average side, a lot of younger folks starting businesses. But when you look at the gender and you look at it on the part of the women, the women are creating jobs or becoming entrepreneurs much, much later in life. I found that very interesting. I don't know why. Why are women becoming entrepreneurs much later in life in a larger number than their male counterparts? And I've got Amaka here. So Amaka runs the Faith Institute. She's on mic now. We're going to have her on mute and just introduce the report to us, introduce her team to us, and then they can take it away. Amaka, you've got the floor. Do unmute and go for it.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Kalu. Can everyone hear me, or can you hear me? Just to be sure.
I can hear you. Audible. Super. You are good to go.
Oh, great. Good evening, everybody. It's great to be here, and thank you very much, Kalu, for inviting us, bringing us into your space, essentially. I'm very excited to be having this conversation today. Like Kalu has mentioned, the State of Entrepreneurship Report in Nigeria Report 2023 is the third in the row that we're putting out. But just a bit of context before I bring up my colleagues who are going to be discussing this a bit more. The State of Entrepreneurship Report, we started this in 2021 because we wanted to just be able to put out a report that assesses the entrepreneurial landscape in Nigeria. For context, the Faith Institute is the research policy and advocacy arm of Faith Foundation. And Faith Foundation is a 23-year-old nonprofit that works to enable Nigerians start, grow, and scale their businesses sustainably. And so with regards to research and policy work, we started that in 2015, but we began to put out the State of Entrepreneurship Report in 2021. And to do that, what we did was to design key indicators that enable us to assess entrepreneurship across states in Nigeria. And those 5 key indicators are 1, business performance, 2, skills acquisition, 3, innovation and technology adoption, 4, perception of opportunities, and 5, enabling environment. When we started in 2021, we covered 26 states to assess entrepreneurship and just what was happening within the space. In 2022, we covered all 36 states and we actually surveyed 8,611 nano, micro, small and medium enterprises. This year, the reports we're going to be giving you a sneak peek into, we surveyed over 10,300 nano, micro, small and medium enterprises across 36 states in Nigeria, but still maintaining the key indicators. And so we're very excited because we have interesting data in this report. And the good thing about data is, like people say, data doesn't lie, right? It shows you what is happening within the space. So whether it's what you were expecting or not, sometimes it really just challenges the assumptions that people have. And like Kalu had already hinted, we have some states coming top that a lot of people would probably not have been expecting. But we'll discuss that a bit more just to find out what is happening and why we have some of those states coming tops on the index. The other thing I need to quickly point out would be that with the State of Entrepreneurship Report, we also, or with the Entrepreneurial Index in the report, we're also able to assess what is happening at a national level, right? We're able to gauge, to say, how well is Nigeria doing on a scale of 0 to 1? How well is Nigeria doing entrepreneurship-wise? And again, we're going to get into that a bit more with regards to what the result is saying for this year. And then we're also able to gauge what is happening across states using the 5 key indicators. So I would pause for now so I don't talk too much and just introduce the other speakers. So quickly, we're going to talk through the methodology. What was our approach to collating the data, to analyzing it? And I'm going to bring up Gospel Obele. Gospel Obele is the CEO of Streetnomics. And Streetnomics is one of the foremost organizations that's just great with market insights and with data collation. And he's been part of the research team for the 3 years that we've done this report. So he will talk through the methodology and approach. And then later I will bring up myself, Wilson Erumebo, who is a senior economist at the Nigerian Economic Summit Group and is also a senior research fellow at the Fate Institute. And he will talk us through some of the key findings. And then we can begin to take questions and get into the meat of it. So, Gospel, if you can hear me, you have the floor. If you would just quickly walk us through the methodology. Kalu has already hinted that Kano came up tops on our index this year. So I'm sure people are curious to find out and to understand how that happened. So if you will, please walk us through the methodology and the approach that we adopted this year. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Amaka. Hello, everyone. Good evening. It's really great to be here again. Thank you, Faith Foundation and the Faith Institute. Yes, the 2023 State of Entrepreneurship report is, for us, the most forward-thinking and truest reflection of the state of entrepreneurship right now in Nigeria. And right from the early stage of developing this whole exercise, leading up to the report, we had very deep dive constructive meetings into, first and foremost, trying to even define the areas we want to measure, such as access to finance, access to markets, technology adoption rate of SMEs, the birth and what we term as death mortality rate of SMEs in Nigeria, for instance, and even providing a very clear demographic profile of who SMEs are, where they are, which particular sectors do we have them more represented in, and all of that. So we had a very, very, very intelligent approach to the conceptualization of this particular research process. And it's also very distinct because it takes into consideration, in terms of the questions that were designed, took into consideration the current realities we have right now in Nigeria. And they were also designed in such a way that, quote unquote, being the fact that we've done this in previous years, the questions were designed from a very from hindsight, safe to say, and from current realities and also future prospects as well. So we had very definitive questions under each of the thematic area. Like I mentioned earlier, not about 10 thematic areas. We also looked at taxation. We also looked at women in business as well. We also looked at the subsidy conversation. We also looked at the Naira exchange rate and all of that, and how it directly impacts on businesses. This survey was done and captured about 10,377 respondents, or SMEs, safe to say, across all the 36 states of Nigeria, including the Federal Capital Territory, Abuja. And we spoke extensively to women, spoke extensively to men-owned businesses. We spoke extensively, to senior level executives and managers who make decisions daily across MSMEs in Nigeria. The study started in June, and the active field data work closed in August. In terms of spread and executing the work, methodology-wise now, we used both qualitative and quantitative methods. Quantitative meaning that we administered a very constructive survey, which I described earlier on, and qualitative meaning that we had in-depth interviews with senior stakeholders in government, senior stakeholders in industries, what we term as the organized private sector, for instance, in SMEDA, NASMEN, BOI, and all the likes. We also had in-depth interviews with some SMEs at random in different locations. We had in-depth interviews with civil society groups, or what we term as stakeholder groups who are representing SME voices as well. So it was sort of like a very mixed method approach. Apologies to sound too technical. Mixed method approach, balancing out that heavy weight of numbers that provides the insight and the broad level perspective into the issues or the reality, plus having an in-depth understanding of how these issues, these opportunities, or these solutions, or these growth prospects exist, as it were. So like I mentioned, over 10,000 SMEs were on the study this year, moving up from close to about 2,500 more from what we captured last year in the 2022 report. In terms of executing the study itself, we had clustered all the 36 states plus the FCT into three broad categories, and I don't want to go too much into technical details, but you have the core states, we have the emerging state blocks, you also have the vulnerable state blocks. The core states are your, safe to say, commercially heavy cities like Lagos, Abuja, Port Harcourt, Kano, Kaduna, and all the likes. Those are the states that made up the core state. There are about 6 of them. We also have about close to 13 or 14 states in the emerging block. And when we term as emerging block, are states that have some form of advantage by virtue of what we term as economies of scale or some improved infrastructure effort. So to take, for instance, Oyo State is an emerging state in that order. Ogun State is an emerging one. Delta State, Edo State are emerging states. You want to think of Abia, Imo, Enugu, they are very emerging as well when it comes to entrepreneurship and all that. So we had about 14 to 15 states in the emerging state block. And the vulnerable state blocks are states that you have very, very, very strong similarities when it comes to their growth and development and all of that in that order. Safe to say as well, in terms of sampling and sample sizes, we adopted what we call the quality sampling approach. You agree with me that you cannot sample all 41 million SMEs in Nigeria. It's completely impossible. Even 10 million, you can't. So what we did was to go through the NBS, Nigerian Bureau of Statistics, social population statistics, to match up with the total population of each state, as well as the total SMEs or businesses in each state. And then we also use that to sort of further verify who should belong to what block in terms of core, emerging, and vulnerable. And further down the line, we attached a defined and reasonable sample size based off on the traction of businesses you have in that particular state. So take, for instance, in the core block state, we sampled close to about 600 SMEs. In the emerging block state, we sampled about 400 to 450. When I say 400 to 450, meaning that for some states it was 50 sample, 50 how would I put it now? 50 samples more, than some others, and then for the vulnerable states, we had about 300 to 350 as it were, so give or take like that. So when you navigate all the numbers, calculate and all that, you arrive at the 10,377. In executing again, what we did was, let's assume you want to roll out a study for 600 SMEs in Lagos. In this case, what we did was to ensure that 600 was representative of, number one, women-led and men-led businesses, very quality representation. Number two, ensuring that it encapsulated all of the strategic geographical locations in Lagos. So take, for instance, businesses in Admiralty or on the island, to businesses in Festac or Joe axis, to businesses in Yaba, Surulere axis, to businesses in Ikeja, Ikorodu, and all of those, Yanapaja and all that. So we had a very quality representation when it comes to high-end urban areas, semi-urban areas, and slightly rural urban areas. And they were also juxtaposed with a strong sectoral representation as well in terms of the cluster of SMEs we spoke to. So we also visited business districts, what we term as business districts, places where businesses are clustered doing business and all of that. And so if by the time you sum all that up together, you have that strategic sample representation per state. And when you multiply that with all the sample sizes we did for every state in Nigeria, based on being on your core, emerging or vulnerable, we emerged at that 10,377 sample size. Safe to say, with all sense of humility, this is one of the most representative studies we have on entrepreneurship in Nigeria, because it's very reflective of gender, very reflective of sector, very reflective of locations where businesses are spread in Nigeria, also very reflective of share of businesses in each state, vis-a-vis the population in that state, and also very reflective of the thematic issues and arguments that we have right now today, and also the prospects. So many of the emerging insights that we have showed us very clearly that there is so much promise with entrepreneurship in Nigeria as a critical solution, as a critical tool, to taking us to that promised land or to changing our economic trajectory for good. So
thank you. Thank you very much, Gospel. That's you've given us a lot to chew on. And so I'll quickly just revert and go back to Kalu now. You've said a lot. And for someone who's not been a part of the team, Kalu, I wonder if you have a striking or a burning question, that you would like to just throw now around methodology, the methodology and the approach that we adopted, like Gospel has explained and shared, before we move further to what the findings are.
Yes, I was just looking at the states ranking, right? I see Borno ahead of, say, Lagos. And just wondering, I know Lagos has a larger population, also has larger opportunities in terms of the sample sizing. How was that done? Did we count, say, the same number in Borno and in Lagos? Just wondering if you could just, in simple English, how did we count Borno? How did we count Lagos? Just to get that sense, yeah.
Okay.
All right, so should I give that a go, Amaka? All right.
Yes, please, Gospel.
Okay, great. Thank you so much, Carlo. Dr. Wilson would speak from the other end of that analysis in terms of how it also emerged or reflected on the ranking. But in terms
so we're losing you slightly. Is it just me, or your voice is faint?
Can you hear me?
He's a bit faint.
Yes,
if you could speak up, that would be wonderful.
Yeah.
All right, is it better now?
Go for it.
Slightly better.
Great. Okay, thank you. So as I mentioned that Dr. Wilson will speak to the other end when it comes to the ranking and those technicalities. But in terms of sampling, for instance, like I mentioned, we made the NBS report, which is sort of like the data lead agency or the leading data agency right now in Nigeria, quote unquote, as the benchmark for also choosing how we spread samples across states. You would agree with me that the nuances that pertain to doing business in Lagos are very much different from those nuances in Borno State. So, safe to say that the methodology was such that we measured across the same thematic metrics, but the sampling was different because we needed more. So, for a state like Lagos, you have more variations. You expect more variations, more diverse perspectives from businesses owing to their experience in doing business in Lagos. But in a state like Borno State, you have lesser variations owing to the socioeconomic climate there. All right. So what we did was to take sample sizes that would help us capture for those variations, and as well as still measure across board vis-a-vis the thematic metrics that we had measured, which is what Dr. Wilson will speak to shortly.
Okay, I mean, I'll go with that. Yeah, I'm sure we'll come back to this, but I'll go with that.
Great. Yeah.
I was just going to add, Kalu, that in very simple English, the sample size, the actual size is not the same, right? So the number that the sample size in Lagos, for example, would be higher in terms of the number than what we would target in Borno, for example, and simply because of all of the dynamics that Gospel just explained.
Gotcha.
One, we have more businesses here; it's more of a commercial center. So, just so that there's a level playing field with all of the other states, we have a system around that, so that the sampling. You don't have Lagos, for example, edging out Borno, so we try to even that out with the size. But in layman's terms and English, the size is just not the same. It's actually more in Lagos than it is in Borno.
Gotcha. And what I've done, guys, in case you're listening, I've put up the infographic of the report. So if you go to my timeline, you can look at the table of the state's result. It's ranked 2022 and 2023. You can see the rankings. That's Kano. I believe it's Kano, Kogi, Kaduna, Borno, Bayelsa, FCT, Plateau, Bauchi, Ekiti, and Edo. That's the top 10. So it's right there on my TL. Just go ahead and grab it, and you can just follow the conversation as we speak. Go ahead.
Thank you very much, Kalu. And so now, having talked through the methodology and our approach, I would invite Wilson Arumaba to just talk through key findings, very high level. We will not be able to go through the entire report. The goal is to give you some teasers so that when we launch the reports, and by the way, we're launching this report next week, Tuesday, at the 9th annual Faith Institute Policy Dialogue Series on Entrepreneurship, holding on Tuesday next week. The report will be available for download. Kalu has shared a bit of a teaser on his timeline, so you get to see that. Lucky you. But to access the full report, you'll be able to do that from Tuesday. However, we can share some key findings, and to do that, I would yield the floor to Wilson Eremebo. Wilson, you have the floor if you can hear me.
Yes, I can hear you, Amaka. Good evening, everyone. Hope you can hear me too.
Yep, clearly.
Okay, so thank you so much for the invitation to be part of this space. And I will just quickly move on to share some of the findings of the report. And, it's interesting that, we're able to survey, about 10,000 businesses across Nigeria, including across states, including the FCT. And what we did and what we've also done in the last 3 years is to come up with what we call an entrepreneurial index for Nigeria. It's almost like us assessing the state of entrepreneurship in Nigeria using numbers. So in this instance, we, before the overall index, we defined 5 major pillars that would then, all of which would form the main index itself. And those pillars are, the first is business performance, skills acquisition, innovation and technology adoption, perception of opportunities, and enabling business environment. And so when Gospel led the survey, what they did basically was, for each of these pillars under business performance, for instance, there are questions. So you're asking businesses, did you grow in the last 1 year? How was your growth rates? What area did you experience growth? Did you create jobs? How many people did you employ this year? Under perception of opportunities, for instance, we're asking them questions relating to, what do you think about the future? Do you plan to expand your investment? Do you think the government will do well? Do you think there'll be more opportunities for you to invest? Under the skills and acquisition, we're asking them whether they were able to acquire training to help them, better run their businesses, and so many other questions. Then business environment, we're asking them things relating to insecurity, access to finance, how easy is it to move goods from one place to another, and we put all of these responses to form an index. And so this year, right, we have an index score of 0.52, out of 1. So 1 being the best case and 0 being the worst case. So you can see that already we're somewhere in the middle as far as the state of entrepreneurship is concerned. So it's almost like a 52 over 100. Last year it was 58. It was 0.58. And this year it's 0.52. So in a way, you're saying that there's some kind of regression where we can say that, last year was much better than this year. And when we also look at the 5 pillars, perception of opportunities, innovation, business performance, skills, and enabling environment, what we found is that of all the 5, it was only 1 that we recorded improvement relative to last year. And that one is innovation and technology. So for perception of opportunities, it was a decline. We had a score of 0.64. For business performance, we had a score of 0.48. For skills acquisition, 0.47. And enabling environment, 0.36. So in essence, it was only 1 pillar that we recorded improvement, which is innovation and digital technology. And I'll talk about that a bit. So we moved from 0.55 to 0.58, just a very insignificant upward movement. And so also for the last 3 years, what we've found is that across these 5 pillars, the enabling business environment has ranked the lowest. So that's where we've had the lowest score, and unsurprisingly so, right? It's very difficult and tough to do business in Nigeria, but just being able to put numbers to this, I think, is what this report, makes it unique. The other thing is also for the area where we've had the highest score in the last 3 years is perception of opportunities. So that particular pillar, we had 0.64, which is the highest across all the other pillars, which basically means that people are more optimistic about the future. And I can say, that's almost typical about Nigerians. We're always, looking forward to the future. We always, have this ego better attitude. Like, even despite the fact that things are tough, we're almost, people would say we're one of the most resilient people in the world. So we see that also within the business environment and even amongst entrepreneurs as well. But one of the striking things is that last year, under this perception of opportunities, it was 0.8 last year. This year is 0.64. So what that means is, yes, people are optimistic about the future, but then the number or the share of people who are optimistic is reducing. And so we could also link that to the fact that it's becoming even more tougher and tougher. And even the hope that people have, and look up to, and, people hope about the future, even that hope in itself is becoming not enough. So, and the key message here is that, look, we must, whether as policymakers and even as entrepreneurs, find ways to see how we can start to implement policies to support the business environment. As a business owner, find ways to keep innovating and improving, so that you can just stay ahead, within your space. So I think that's one of the high-level summaries that we would look at. And I know for the states, I know Kano had mentioned this, and that Kano came on top, amongst all of the states that we looked at. And interestingly, Kano was, had the highest ranking across 3 of the 5 major pillars that we looked at. So in terms of business performance, innovation, and enabling environment, they came on top, even though we see that in the other 2 areas, they were not on top, but they still did well in those other 2 areas. And so why Kano? And I think it's a lot of it could also mean that people in Kano had a sense of very high level sense of optimism in the last 1 year. You could allude that to what's happening within the electoral space, but also there were several policies, both by the government and even by international partners, that we saw that were targeting some of these small businesses, giving access to loans, grants, and many of those. Even the World Bank had several programs that were implemented in Kano. And more recently, you would see that the governor announced the removal of taxes, suspension of taxes for low-income earners and small business owners. And I think that's something, very, very impressive that would, in a way, positively impact the business environment. So there are states like Yobe, Niger, Taraba, Osun, and Zamfara state. Zamfara had the lowest and the least score, across all of the 36 states and the FCT that we looked at. And I also want to make one last point on the innovation and digital technology aspect. I know someone may be asking questions as to what are we innovating? Why, across all of the 5 pillars, why did we have an improvement, even though it's minor, within in this pillar? And the reason mainly is because the government implemented this Naira redesign policy, from late October last year down to the early part of this year. And yes, much of the policy had a negative impact on businesses, because we also tracked that in the report. Many businesses said they were, in fact, it affected them negatively in terms of demand, sales, and all of that. But what we found is that even amidst that policy, a couple of businesses, or many businesses, found opportunities to innovate. By innovation, it simply means a new way of doing things, right? So some businesses had to use cash, had to use some cashless payment options, the use of ATM transfers, internet banking, different platforms that, did not require a heavy cash usage. And so, in a nutshell, I think many businesses saw that as innovation. And what that has done, I mean, even if you go to some stores now, it's almost like you can easily transfer to them and make payments. So things that we would never have thought of, the kind of businesses that would never have had thought of, implementing cashless mode of payment, they did that, during that period. So I think that's perhaps one of the positives that we could highlight from the whole Naira redesign policy amidst all of the challenges that came with it. So maybe I should stop here for now, and then perhaps we can, ask questions or talk about other aspects of the report.
That sounds like Wilson. I've got two quick questions, right? I looked at the Kano report and I saw there that the state government did a tax cut or an elimination of taxes for the lower earning businesses. Do you think that was a factor prior, or that was a factor like after the fact, like the businesses were down, then the tax cut came, and then they now created new businesses? I guess my question is, was that a factor in the creation of new business because the state government had removed taxes? That's the first question. If you can answer that, I have a second one.
I think what it did is basically to, in a way, ease doing business. I'm not quite sure if there's a clear linkage between that policy and the creation of new businesses. What I think, it did is to say, look, if you're not paying taxes, and then because we all know, and this is also a separate conversation where we have a full report on some of the tax problems that any small businesses face. And in fact, multiple taxation has ranked, high amongst all of the challenges, whether it's, access to finance and co. So it's always among the top 5, for the last 3 years. And so just being able to make that announcement, whether or not it translates to maybe profits or co, I think that's a whole different, argument, but being able to make that announcement just simply sends a signal that, look, pro-small business friendly. You guys have suffered too much. We all know what businesses go through as far as multiple taxes are concerned across Nigeria. You paid, whether it's one license, road tax, permits and levies. There's even the tax and levies act has truck levies, the wheelbarrow levies, and all of those things that were instituted, decades ago. They're still there. So just being able to see that this is a pressure point for many businesses and making that announcement, I think, is something many businesses felt that, no, this is a good move for us. Gotcha. And perhaps maybe something better would come in the future.
Okay, real quick, I want to add a few guys to ask questions. The second question is that I saw the report. There's a table there that says what factor contributed to your business growth. Lots of questions there, or lots of responses there. Of course, number one was access to new markets. So everyone says access to new markets was number one contributor to my success. But government policies and support was dead last, which means that the entrepreneurs in Nigeria do not regard government policies and support as a significant factor to the success of their business. That's an indictment. That's also a bit of like, we could do better. That's low-hanging fruit right there, that all the funds that we're expending on trader money market to the poor folks is not really impacting on the entrepreneurs. They are saying that government policy and support is the least contributor to my business growth. Very interesting data point there, Wilson.
Absolutely. And the interesting thing about this is that for the last 3 years that we've done this report and asked this question, government policies and support has, been at the bottom. So it's almost like the irrelevant factor that businesses say has made them grow for those businesses that have reported growth. So I think that's a very clear signal. All of the issues we're talking about, infrastructure, relating to government policies on taxes, policies on access to finance, even policies on doing business itself, the logistics, trade, customs, and all of those things. There's still something that we haven't done. So many things that we haven't done that, that we need to do to unlock even more opportunities for MSMEs in Nigeria.
Gotcha, guys. Thanks so much. And with your kind support, I'd like to just maybe take Kabiru. He has a question. Kabiru, go ahead. Hey, Kabiru, you've got to unmute. Go ahead. Yeah, there you go.
Thank you very much. And I don't know about this year report, but I'm into business in Kano, and I have been in business in Kano, and I'm also connected with the government. in line with exports and the issue of technology, because my company, Arewa Prime Limited, and from the export line, I happen to be a secretary of Organization of Nigerian Exporters, which all the sector in Kano, starting with all the marketers, like in the Wano market, Gunduawa markets, where issue of export of hibiscus, ginger, and others are going on. And they all know me, because all the collaboration we have with Jigawa State, Katsina State, and Yobe State, and Maiduguri, where we get most of the product, like Zobo and sesame seed. I don't know. These reports, we people who are doing business in Kano, we actually don't know about it. But I know how Kano State government is doing kind of reports through Ministry of Commerce and Industry, which the former commissioner, we are in good time with him, and most of the meeting we had here, or what we call it, workshop, he used to attend, and we used to invite him to that. And we like to be part of the, what can I call it, the statisticians who collect the data from the business people, which means from our side, I may have like 500 business people right now that are in Kano, and they are doing their business in Kano through our groups of business like exports, Kano exporters, Kano ginger exporters, Kano onion exporters, Kano sorghum exporters, Kano hibiscus flower buyers and suppliers, and also exporters. We all have this. Those who have NAPC certificate in Kano and they are all willing to export. We used to have this kind of NAPC seminar and others. So we all have our contact and others. So I don't know, how can we be part of it in the future, whereby there is this kind of statistic to be able to contribute to our insight. Thank you.
Well, Maka, go ahead.
Yes, thank you, Kalu, and thank you, Kabiru. We're very happy to hear and get this feedback from you. So if you could just drop your contact, we'll be very happy to partner with your organization when we commence the next round of data collation, which will be in the new year, God keeping us. But I do have a question for you, Kabiru. Since you're based in Kano, you run your business in Kano, you work with a lot of other entrepreneurs in Kano. One of the things that we would like to achieve with this conversation is that we also get feedback on the data that we have collated. So from your experience as an entrepreneur, boots on the ground, how would you describe running the business in Kano? Our data is showing that, people are very optimistic about doing business in Kano. In terms of business performance, we see Kano coming top. So do you want to sort of share feedback around that to validate, or maybe even critique the data that we have?
I actually agree with that. In every development, there must be challenges and there must be a shortcoming. Perhaps from all the business people here in Kano, the business is growing up, and there is most likely whoever you employ as a businessman, when you employ somebody, you employ 20 guys, you can be able to maybe 19 of the guys, they will try their best, because there are a lot of people who are jobless, and so when you get these people who are now that they agree you have taken them, they know anything that will make them not succeed, definitely they will have to avoid that one. Number two, the government, they are not giving anything like funds, but they are trying their best. Whenever you invite the commissioner, sometimes even a deputy governor, then they will definitely attend. And so when it comes to having kind of a meeting with any official from the government, they may help you and attend. And when you have anything to do with federal government, you will try your best. Definitely have it when you're from Kano. But the challenge is that issue of transportations. For us, actually, I can say I am not facing these challenges, but most of the PT business people, they are facing this kind of challenges. When you brought goods from outside the state, when you're coming, you may likely encounter with the state official like Karota, and this means when you grow up, they know you are very strong. Nobody will stop your goods and others. Also, there are other agencies. Most of them are criminals. They used to come up when you load your items or you load your goods, they will tell you have to pay tax, and they are not tax collectors. And last season I had that. I even go to the Ministry of Commerce, Ministry of Local Government, and the tax office to be able to discover that most of these companies who claim that they are consultants, that they are collecting money from the people, they were not employed by the state. Perhaps they were criminals, and we are fighting that. And I think that's the best challenges we have. But actually, if you have money in Kano, once you can be able to, how can I call it, break through the market, you can have money in all the aspects, not only agricultural market, perhaps even the other aspect of the, all these entrepreneurships, opening schools, all those, a lot of businesses. When you can, but you have to have big money, because whatever you bring up, somebody might have already established that. But if you have big money, you can be able to penetrate the market, and you will get the profit you want.
Yep.
But you have to have patience. Thank you very much.
Good insight, Kabiru. Amaka, I think Amaka has dropped off. Good insight, Kabiru. Thank you so much. I have Doctor, I think he's dropped off. Doctor, welcome to the session. You are among the speakers. I just wonder if you could maybe introduce yourself and just maybe give a brief talk, and then I can go back to Adesat wants to ask a question. So, Doctor, if you can hear me, just unmute and go ahead and introduce yourself, and then just a brief talk, and then we'll move on. Thank you, sir.
Okay, thank you very much. It's good to be with all of you. Good evening from here, and it's been insightful listening to the discussion all the while. Well, we have been able to see that Kano is actually doing well, extremely well from the data, and personally, I'm excited about it, particularly coming from the north now. It means that there is a shift in the table, and this is exactly the kind of results some of us are looking forward to. We want development, economic development, to take place in all spheres of the country, and we also want to see government from all spheres doing their best to improve ease of doing business, and to also see how they can support MSMEs. We also have this data. It shows that the government, directly or indirectly, have been able to support MSMEs in that state. That's why we are able to get this report. Beyond that, we want to begin to see how we can now study Kano more, to see what they did right this time, and use it as a model to improve in other states. It could be used to develop white paper or recommendations for other states to work on. I will also continue to listen as the conversation goes on, so that I can also learn and perhaps contribute as we go further. Thank you very much.
Super. Thank you for that. Amaka is back on. Amaka, did you want to say anything? I've got a guy that wants to speak, but go ahead, Amaka.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you very much, Kalu. I assume that was Dr. Igbeshola that just spoke, the president of ASBON. Yes, so I heard his voice. And so I actually want to build on what he just said. The good thing about data is that it shows you areas of improvement, right? And without even articulating recommendations, you can sort of just see what you should be doing, where you got it wrong and what you should be doing right. And so, like he said, one of the things we like to do with data like this is to do a deep dive, to just further engage with states that come tops to understand what is going on within the space. And what we do with data at the Fade Institute is we use that to engage with the government. And we do that first by engaging in a dialogue conversation. At the beginning of the conversation this evening, I had mentioned that the report is going to be launched at the 9th annual Fate Institute Policy Dialogue Series holding next week. What we plan to do with that event is bring together the public sector and the private sector into one room, where we are discussing findings from this report. And we're also going to be discussing a taxation report. Wilson alluded to that when he spoke. Usually what we do with all of the reports that we put out annually, we have a major focus. For last year, our major focus was bridging the access to finance gap. This year, the focus is looking at taxation. And everything that we do in terms of even our research focus is data guided, right? So, for example, Wilson also mentioned the top issues that entrepreneurs complain or select as challenge areas are: one, access to finance, access to markets, multiple taxation, and then the enabling environment or government policies, right? And so the focus for this year will be looking at taxation. And what that does is we're bringing everybody into the same room, which is very critical, because sometimes when there's no communication between both sides, the government is doing its best from its perspective because it feels, okay, these are the issues and it's doing its best. But then we find out that it's not addressing the gaps within the ecosystem, and which is why conversations like this, like the annual policy dialogue that we're hosting next Tuesday, is critical because it brings everybody into one room and then we can discuss based on data, based on facts, and then arrive at key agreements that now sort of enable us begin to engage around policy, to see implementation, to see change in the areas that we seek. And so, like Dr. Deshola suggested, the development of white papers, that's definitely something that we're interested in doing going forward before we begin to collate data for the new year, is that we'd engage a bit more with some of these top states to find out what is happening. And on the back of that, have synthesized recommendations and approaches or even frameworks that we can now begin to use to engage with the government. Thankfully, we have a new government in power. We have a new government that also, seems to be listening because we already have a presidential committee on fiscal and tax policy reforms that has been inaugurated. And thankfully, we're also in conversation with that committee, but we also would like to hear from the private sector, which is why we're having this dialogue program, so that all of the feedback is synthesized, all of the recommendations and insights are synthesized, and we can further engage with the government and hopefully begin to see implementation for NMSMEs in Nigeria. So I wanted to add that bit. I'm sorry.
Oh, good.
Thank
good,
you,
good.
Kalu.
Thanks, Amaka. Let me get Adisat. I think his hand is up, and I want to go on DM. Adisat, did you have a specific question as regards the report? Did you want to make a comment on that? Adisat going once, Adisat going twice. Great. So, I've got tons of questions here, and I was going to ask that question again, Amaka. I don't know if you can speak to that on why the reports post that, why women, right, later in life are becoming entrepreneurs. Why is just the female gender? That was something that struck my mind. But plus 50, you see the graph basically going up, indicating women are getting into businesses as they get older. Do you have a reason for that? Is that something you also noticed?
Well, so I can infer some reasons, right? Because I wouldn't be able to speak specifically because we didn't collate data specifically around that, right? But I do know that what usually happens is that you have first off we have a lot of women in Nigeria, right? So when you look at Nigeria's population, we have about 49 point something percent. I don't remember the exact points, but almost 50%. So almost half of the population in Nigeria. And you have a lot of women engaged in entrepreneurship, right? In fact, we've done a study, a separate white paper that looks at women in entrepreneurship. We even did another report just looking at women leading nano and micro businesses, in fact, across Nigeria, South Africa, and Kenya. And that's a separate report and a separate conversation, right? But the point is you have a lot of women engaging in entrepreneurship, and that number is beginning to grow. And there can be several reasons for that. One can be the economic situation, where we've moved from the era where you have just one breadwinner, for example, in a family. We're in a situation where you need to have two breadwinners in a family if you're going to survive. And in fact, nowadays, people will tell you if you have a job, you need a side hustle if you're going to survive, right? So there could be that. That could be one. The other point could also be that you have a lot of people who have worked, spent their younger years working and have saved up some money. But what also happens with gaining work experience is that it allows you to understand structure and processes, right? So, and this can be debatable, right? So sometimes you see that young people might rush in to start a business, quickly without fully understanding what it takes to run the business. And then they rush in and then rush out, unfortunately, right? But then with the older folks, what happens is that they've worked in an organized system. They understand structure. They understand corporate governance. They've also saved up money, and so are able to better manage their finances, are able to take better decisions, are able to take calculated risks, right, at that point. And so that might be one reason for that they've saved up money, they've spent their younger years working, they've accumulated all of this experience, and then now they're saying, oh, okay, it's time to start a business, and they decide to actually go into that. And then two, it might just also be the economic situation where it's like, apart from what I'm doing, the job I'm doing now, I need several side hustles, in fact. So I might have one, I need 2, 3 more.
Gotcha.
So there could be several reasons for this. But I can't point to one exactly because we don't have data backing that.
I actually think you've answered the question. I would say, in addition to that, culturally, I think that at that age, they are no longer taking care of their kids. And I think they have that time on their hands. Then the experience and the money is now available, but they have no kids to take care of, so they start a business. It's just natural. Kids are a business, so they just...
that's a very great point you mentioned, Carlo, because if I refer to the paper that we developed, the burden of childcare and running the home front was one of the major reasons that a lot of female entrepreneurs cited. So I agree with you that, when you're older, you don't have, that burden is not as much, it's less because the children are adults, have grown now. So, I agree with you. That could be a strong reason.
Yeah, great point. Go ahead.
Okay, I would also like to add this. It will interest us to know that Nigeria has the highest number of women entrepreneurs in the world. And according to Smeaton's latest report, about 41% of the captured MSMEs are women. And it went further to show that women are able to run enduring businesses. While most businesses run by men die between the first and the second year of their existence, women businesses most often than not go to 5 years or more of existence. And it shows, it also tallies with the fact that women have been identified to be willing to pay back loans very much more than men. And these are some of the factors that may have made it possible for women to have a higher hand this time. And if you look at quite a number of intervention programs coming up from the national government and even international organizations, they are most targeted to women-led businesses. I think there's something we still need to learn more about women, what they are doing to get it right.
Yeah.
And women this time to give it to them. My name is Dr. Femi Egbeshola. I'm the national. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. I mean, folks, right? Every page of this report is a data point. And it just takes you can learn so much about your own business, about Nigeria, about the issues, and of course about what folks are doing well. I completely endorse, not just endorse, I want to just thank Amaka and her team, Wilson, Dr. Obele, that has put this together. This takes a lot of work to do. It's just rich, lots of data. I'm going to come back to this report over and over and over again. So we've spent an hour, and it looks like we'll be here for just 10 minutes, right? And my DMs are now starting to blow up, but I'm so sorry, guys. The report will be out, like Amaka has said. Get a copy and read it. It's just rich, and I think there's a lot of work that has gone in here. So Amaka, I'm just happy to come back on and just maybe close us out. I want to just thank you, especially for allowing me just to even take a sneak peek and to look at this. It's good work, great team you've got there. Go ahead and just say your thanks, and then, of course, we'll let everyone go enjoy their weekday.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Carlo. Thank you for hosting us. This has been a great conversation. And like you said, we could go on and on and on. But I hope that this is the first in the series of several conversations that we would have as we plan to also begin to engage and hold government and other ecosystem players accountable. So it's not just the government. We need collaborative efforts to effect change within the ecosystem. But just before we go, I would like to specially invite everyone listening to the 9th Annual Faith Institute Policy Dialogue Series holding next week Tuesday at the EcoBank Pan-African Center, 270 Ozumba Mbadiwe, Victoria Island, Lagos. It's a hybrid event, so someone like Kabiru, who is in Kano, for example, you can join in virtually. You can register at www.faithfoundation.org/PDS. That's www.faith, faith is FATE, faithfoundation.org/PDS. I hope that we can drop it at some point so that people get to see that. But we'll be very happy to have you join live in the conversation and also contribute your thoughts and your insights, so that at the end of the day, we have a robust conversation. We're able to, glean insights from everyone and synthesize all of that and consequently begin to engage with the government within the new year. So thank you very much again, Carlo, and thank you very much to everyone who joined us today, who listened, who sent in messages, who asked questions. We appreciate it, and we hope that we'll have more conversations like this in the future. Thank you, Carlo.
Thank you, Amaka. Thank you, everyone. Great report, great show, everyone. Thank you so much. You guys, Nigeria is going places. Thank you. Shout out to the women out there creating the jobs. Yeah, shout out to them. So you guys make just shout out to you guys. All right, we're gonna just leave for now, and we'll hope we'll see Amaka again on Tuesday. Amaka, if you have that infographic, please share, and I'll also retweet just so we can follow.
Yes, I will. I'll be happy to share that. Thank you.
Super.
Thank you very much.
All right, guys. On that note,
have a good rest of the day, everybody.
Thank you so much. On that note, guys, sadly I had to let you guys go, and I'll see you guys again on Sunday, 7 p.m. West African time, when we have another spaces, right? All right, you guys take care. Love you all, and bye.
Bye.